After the Fed's cocaine bear interest rate pivot last week, central bankers all over the world are now turning to rate cuts like lemmings off a cliff. In fact, Bank of America's Michael Hartnett now predicts 152 rate cuts in the coming year. This is a problem given that inflation is continuing across the major economies, with the economist pegging final 2023 inflation numbers at 4.1 for the US, that's twice the target, 5.5% for the euro area, and 6.8% for Britain. Even Japan is at 3.2%, which is way above their target after literally decades of structural deflation. Now, normally central banks know better than to cut rates into inflation, because it is Econ 101 that cutting interest rates pumps inflation. It makes it cheaper to borrow, and people borrow in order to spend more. In fact, the Fed knows this so well, it has only cut into inflation 5 times since 1942. By the way, every single time followed by runaway inflation. Instead, central banks normally wait until the last possible moment to cut. That moment when recession is just cresting the hill, at which point they cut loose with the cannons in a desperate bid to stave off the coming crash, which gives us the classic central bank boom-bust cycle. It never works, of course, because the Fed is incompetent, so literally every single cut since at least 1980 actually led to soaring joblessness. So the precise cuts that are supposed to boost the economy apparently always come too late. Why so late? Because the Fed is afraid of getting blamed for its recessions, but it's also afraid of getting blamed for its inflation. So it tries to trade off the two, steal a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe nobody will notice. So it's all pretty shabby, but the problem is, forget trade-offs, at this point the Fed is cutting directly into inflation. Now, for them to be that desperate suggests either that Joe Biden's got pictures of Jerome Powell partying with Hunter, or more likely, it suggests this is not a normal recession cresting the hill, this is a monster. So that all brings us to the lemmings, the farm team of central bankers who transmit Federal Reserve incompetence to the rest of humanity. They too have been itching to cut because of local stagnation, but their hands have been tied because they can't move until the Fed moves, because their local capital would flood out to the US chasing higher returns, which would crash their currencies, as is currently happening to the yen as we speak. And so now that the Fed has waved the white flag, worldwide inflation is again on the menu, of course after a respectable bout of recession-induced deflation. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. The irony is the Fed's rate hikes have certainly savaged banks, companies, and consumers, especially mortgage buyers, but they haven't actually tightened financial conditions for the simple reason that federal deficits are so large, they're pulling vast quantities, so far at least $1 trillion, out of bank savings parked at the Fed and putting them back into circulation. Put it together, and the central banks of the world are coordinating for worldwide stagflation, slow growth and reaccelerating inflation, once again following the 1970s disaster to a T. Read the full article, juicy charts and all, at profsatange.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.